In the vast, untamed heart of the West, the most dangerous prisons are not made of iron bars, but of golden promises and silent expectations. The Montana sun cast a golden sheen over the prairie, but for Adeline Monroe, the light felt as false as the smile of her fiancé, Barrett Thorne. Standing in a lavish wedding gown within her father's sprawling estate, she was a prize about to be claimed. The union was meant to merge the two most powerful families in the territory, a strategic move orchestrated by her father, Judge Alistair Monroe. For Adeline, however, it was the end of a life she barely had, a final lock on a gilded cage. She knew of Barrett's cold heart and the greed that hid behind his polished manners. He did not see a wife in her, he saw an asset, a beautiful piece of property to complete his collection of fine things. The heavy bell tolled from the chapel, a sound that echoed like a death knell in Adeline's ears, summoning guests to witness her surrender. But in that moment, a different kind of resolve took hold. She would not be a pawn in her father's games. She would not belong to a man she despised. With her heart pounding against her ribs, she made a choice. Slipping out a rear door, she moved past the manicured gardens and the grand stables that held her father's prized horses. Her only plan was to run. To run from the suffocating wealth, the hollow promises, and the future her father had so meticulously built for her. A future that felt more like a tomb than a life. Her elegant satin shoes, never meant for such terrain, sank into the dust as she fled. The manicured lawns of the Monroe estate quickly gave way to the untamed wilderness of the open prairie. Each step was a rebellion. She did not look back, fearing the sight of the grand house would weaken her resolve. The wind tore at her veil, a cruel reminder of the ceremony she had just abandoned. She ran until her lungs burned, and the sounds of the estate faded into the vast silence of the land. She was alone, a stark and terrifying freedom that was both a relief and a burden. The world she knew was gone, replaced by an endless expanse of grass and sky. As dusk painted the sky in shades of bruised purple and fiery orange, exhaustion finally overtook her. Adeline collapsed near a small, gurgling creek, her magnificent dress now torn and stained with the dirt of her escape. The wilderness, once a distant painting viewed from her window, was now a living, breathing entity all around her. The howl of a distant coyote sent a shiver down her spine. Curling up beneath the gnarled branches of an ancient cottonwood tree, she closed her eyes. Sleep was a dark, unwelcoming tide, pulling her into a world of troubled dreams, where the faces of her father and Barrett Thorne twisted into menacing shadows, promising pursuit. Far away in the foothills that bordered the Monroe lands, a Blackfoot warrior named Callan checked his snares. His movements were a silent, fluid dance with the world around him, his eyes missing nothing. He saw the subtle language of the wild, a bent twig, the faint scrape of a claw on stone, the whisper of the wind through the pines. It was then that he noticed something entirely out of place. Faint impressions in the soft earth, the delicate tracks of fine shoes, leading deeper into the unforgiving wilderness. They were erratic, panicked, the trail of someone running not to a destination but away from something terrible, something that had followed them from the world of men. Callan knew this land and its dangers. It did not forgive carelessness. A deep, instinctual suspicion of outsiders warred with a flicker of concern within him. His people had suffered greatly from the greed of the settlers, men who spoke with forked tongues and whose promises turned to dust. They were currently locked in a tense dispute over the sacred River Valley lands, a place central to his tribe's spirit and survival. Judge Monroe, the powerful man from the Grand House, was at the center of this dispute, his influence casting a long and dark shadow. Was this runaway connected to him? He had to know more before she brought trouble to his people. He decided to follow the tracks, to understand the purpose of this strange visitor. He moved like a ghost through the trees, his moccasins making no sound on the dry earth. He was a shadow, unseen and unheard, observing from a distance. He saw the state of her, the ruined dress, the exhaustion etched on her face. She was clearly no threat, but her presence here was a riddle he needed to solve. He watched as she stumbled, her strength failing her. He saw the desperation in her eyes as she drank from the creek, a desperation he understood all too well. This was not a woman of the wilderness. She was a bird with a broken wing, fallen far from her nest. His initial suspicion began to soften, replaced by a cautious empathy. He had seen the cruelty of the world she came from, the way it consumed people, leaving them hollow. Her flight spoke of a deep pain. He remained hidden as she fell into an exhausted sleep, his vigil a silent promise to protect the land from any danger she might represent, but also, perhaps, to protect her from the dangers of the land itself. The moon rose, casting a silver light over the sleeping figure. Kalen stayed his ground, a silent guardian in the vast, lonely night, wondering what storm had cast this strange woman upon the shores of his world. Adeline awoke with a start, the morning sun filtering through the leaves. Every muscle in her body ached, a painful testament to her desperate flight. The silence of the prairie was unnerving, a stark contrast to the constant noise of her former life. She pushed herself to her feet, her fine dress now a ruined mess of silk and lace. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, a raw, unfamiliar sensation. She knew she could not stay put. Her father's reach was long, and his fury would be boundless. She had to keep moving, to push deeper into the wilderness where his influence could not touch her. But as she took a step, a figure emerged from the trees. It was Kalen. He moved with a quiet confidence that was both intimidating and mesmerizing. His expression was stern, his eyes sharp and assessing. A bow was slung across his back, a symbol of a world utterly alien to her. Fear, cold and sharp, seized Adeline. She braced herself for the worst, her mind racing with the terrible stories she had heard about the native tribes. She was helpless, alone, and at the mercy of a man who was a complete unknown. She held her breath, expecting a threat, a demand, or worse. The silence between them stretched, thick with tension and the unspoken history of their two peoples. But the threat never came. Kalen did not speak. Instead, he simply extended a hand, offering a leather flask. Adeline stared at it, then at his face. His eyes, she now saw, held no malice. They held a deep weariness, a profound caution, but not cruelty. Hesitantly, she took the flask and drank the cool, clean water, the simple act a profound relief. He then offered her a piece of dried venison. The gesture was one of simple, unadorned kindness, a currency she had rarely encountered in her own world of calculated courtesies. It was a moment that shattered her preconceived notions and planted a small seed of trust. He finally spoke, his English broken but clear. "This land is not for you. You will not survive." He pointed towards the mountains. "I will take you to a safe place. You must follow." Adeline looked from the imposing warrior to the endless prairie behind her, where she knew her father's men would soon be searching. She had no choice. One path led back to a cage, the other led into the unknown with a stranger. With a trembling nod, she agreed. As she followed him through the dense woods, she felt a strange sense of surrender, placing her life in the hands of a man she had just met, a man from a world she had been taught to fear. Back in the town of Red Rock, chaos reigned. Judge Alistair Monroe's fury was a palpable force, shaking the very foundations of his mansion. His daughter's flight was not just a family embarrassment, it was a catastrophic business disaster. The failed wedding threatened to unravel a secret and highly profitable land deal he had brokered with the Thorne family. The deal concerned the very river valley that the Blackfoot tribe considered sacred ground. The union of their children was the final, legal seal on a contract built on deception and greed. Now, everything was at risk, and the judge's anger was matched only by his desperation. To save his reputation and his fortune, the judge needed his daughter back, and he needed her back quietly. He summoned the one man in the territory known for his relentless ability to find anyone, Gideon Croft, a bounty hunter known as the Ghost. Croft was a man of few words and a chilling reputation. He did not care for justice or morality. He cared only for the weight of gold in his pocket. He listened to the judge's furious demands with a cold, detached air, his eyes promising results, not comfort. The price for finding the judge's daughter would be high, but for Alistair Monroe, no price was too steep. Jasper Thorne, His pride wounded and his public image shattered, insisted on joining the hunt. His desire for Adeline had curdled into a venomous need for revenge. He was not interested in her safe return. He wanted to punish her for the humiliation she had caused him. He saw her as his property, a possession that had dared to defy him. His fury was a dangerous, unstable element in the search. He spoke of the native tribes with contempt. "I wager the heathens have her," he sneered to Croft. "We will make them tell us where she is." His words dripped with a casual cruelty that made even the hardened bounty hunter wary. And so, two relentless hunters set out into the vast prairie, their motivations a toxic mix of greed and vengeance. Gideon Croft, the methodical tracker, followed the faint signs left by Adeline's desperate flight. Barrett Thorne, the arrogant cattle baron's son, rode with a storm in his heart, dreaming of the moment he would reclaim what he believed was his. Their prey was Adeline, a young woman who had traded a life of comfortable misery for a dangerous and uncertain freedom. The wilderness had become a chessboard, and a deadly game of pursuit had just begun. Kalen led Adeline to a place hidden deep within the folds of the mountains, a small, secluded camp that was invisible to the outside world. Her arrival was met with suspicion. The eyes of the Blackfoot people were wary, their faces etched with the memory of broken treaties and stolen land. An elderly woman, a shaman named Nuna with eyes as ancient as the mountains themselves, regarded her with a particularly piercing gaze. It felt as if she could see every secret Adeline carried in her heart. Adeline stood before them, her ruined dress a stark symbol of the world she had left behind, feeling utterly alone and out of place. Kalen spoke to his people, his voice calm and steady. He assured them that the woman meant no harm, that she was a fugitive from her own kind, not a spy. Though some remained skeptical, his word carried great weight. Slowly, Adeline began to find a fragile footing in this new world. She watched the daily rhythms of the camp, a life lived in harmony with the land. It was a world where honor was not a word to be spoken in courtrooms, but a principle to be lived every day. It was a world where a person's worth was measured by their actions, not by the gold in their father's vault. Seeing the sincerity in Adeline's efforts to adapt, Nuna's demeanor softened. The old shaman began to teach her the ways of the wilderness. She showed Adeline which plants could heal and which could harm, how to make poultices from river clay and the crushed roots of mountain flowers to soothe her blistered feet. Adeline was a quick learner. Her hands, once accustomed to embroidery and piano keys, now growing skilled at practical tasks. She was shedding the skin of the delicate lady she was raised to be, and discovering a strength she never knew she possessed. A quiet bond formed between the two women, one of respect and shared wisdom. A deeper connection was also growing between Adeline and Kalen. In the quiet evenings by the fire, they would speak. He told her of his people's history, of the beauty of their traditions, and of the deep sorrow he carried for the family he had lost in a conflict years ago. She, in turn, told him of her gilded cage, of the loneliness she felt amidst wealth and privilege. He saw the resilient spirit beneath her refined exterior, and she saw the noble heart beneath his stoic guard. It was a slow, gentle unfolding, a love story written not in grand declarations, but in shared glances and quiet understanding. One afternoon, while gathering herbs with Nuna far from the main camp, Adeline stumbled upon a peculiar rock formation. Half hidden by overgrown vines was a stone marker, etched with faded symbols she did not recognize. Nuna explained that it was an ancient boundary stone, marking the edge of their ancestral hunting grounds for generations. But as she brushed away the moss, she pointed to something new, fresh chisel marks near the base, a crude alteration of the ancient symbols. It was a subtle desecration, a quiet act of aggression that sent a chill through Adeline, though she did not yet understand its full meaning. They returned to the camp and told Kalen what they had found. His face darkened as he listened. The boundary stone was a sacred landmark, and any alteration was a grave offense. That night, under the cloak of darkness, he went to investigate. He knew this was connected to the growing pressure from the settlers, a sign that their enemies were growing bolder. He moved with the silence of a hunting cat, his senses on high alert. Near the defaced stone, he noticed the earth was disturbed. Following his instincts, he began to dig, his fingers soon hitting something hard and smooth, a hidden oilskin pouch. Inside the pouch was a leather-bound folder. Kalen carefully carried it back to the camp. By the light of a low fire, he and Adeline examined its contents. Inside were detailed survey maps of the entire river valley and a partially signed legal document. The document was a contract, deeding the land from the territory government to a newly formed development company. Adeline's breath caught in her throat as she read the names of the company's founding partners, her father, Judge Alistair Monroe, and Barrett Thorne's father, the powerful cattle baron. The truth hit her with the force of a physical blow. It was all a lie. Her entire life, her engagement, the wedding, it was all a meticulously crafted illusion. The marriage was nothing more than a business transaction, the final piece of a corrupt puzzle designed to legally seize this land from Kalen's people. Her own family was prepared to build their empire on the ruins of this tribe's existence. A wave of shame and fury washed over her. She was not just a runaway bride. She was the unwitting key to a massive fraud. She looked at Kalen, his face grim in the firelight, and knew she could not simply hide. She had to find a way to stop her father. Meanwhile, Gideon Croft and Barrett Thorne were closing in. Croft, with his uncanny tracking skills, had found signs that Adeline was not alone. He found the tracks of a man's moccasins alongside hers. "She is with one of the natives," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. For Barrett, this was the ultimate insult. The thought of Adeline choosing the company of what he called a savage over him ignited a dangerous rage in his heart. His desire for revenge now burned hotter than ever. He was no longer just hunting a runaway fiancé. He was hunting an enemy who had stolen his honor. Barrett, blinded by his hatred, devised a cruel and reckless plan. "We will flush them out," he declared, his eyes gleaming with a malevolent light. "We will set the forest at the edge of the valley ablaze. The fire will drive them out of whatever hole they are hiding in. It will smoke them out like rats." Gideon Croft hesitated. He was a ruthless man, but he was not a fool. An uncontrolled wildfire was a destructive force that could consume everything in its path, including them. It was a desperate, chaotic strategy. "That is a dangerous game," Croft warned, his voice low. But Barrett's arrogance and wealth gave him a sense of invincibility. "I am paying you to find her, not to question my methods," he snapped. Greed won the battle in Gideon Croft's soul. He nodded grimly, and they rode to the northern edge of the valley, where the dry timber and thick underbrush were most vulnerable. Under the cover of dusk, they set the fire. It started as a small flicker, but the wind quickly fanned it into a roaring monster. A wall of orange flame began to tear through the forest, a terrifying, unstoppable wave of destruction. The fire spread with terrifying speed, consuming ancient trees and driving wildlife before it in a panicked stampede. A thick, choking smoke billowed into the sky, blotting out the stars. Barrett watched the devastation with a look of grim satisfaction. In his twisted mind, this fiery spectacle was a testament to his power, a grand act of purification that would cleanse the land of its savage inhabitants and deliver his prize back to him. He had unleashed a hell upon the earth, certain that Adeline and her protector would have no choice but to run directly into his waiting arms. The smell of smoke reached the Blackfoot camp first, a sharp, acrid warning on the wind. Kalen knew instantly what it meant. This was no natural fire. It was a hunter's tactic, a brutal and desperate move designed to trap them. Panic began to ripple through the small community as the orange glow of the approaching inferno became visible over the ridge. The fire was moving too fast, cutting off their main escape routes. They were caught between a wall of flame and the men who had lit it. Fear was a tangible thing, thick and suffocating like the smoke that now filled the air. But Kalen did not panic. He had a final, desperate option. He gathered his people, and Adeline, his voice a calm anchor in the storm of fear. He told them of an old network of caves, a secret path that wound its way through the heart of the mountain, known only to the elders of his tribe. It was a dangerous, lightless journey, but it was their only hope of survival. As he led them towards the hidden entrance, Adeline looked back at the advancing flames, her heart filled with a mixture of terror and a new, steely resolve. Hiding was no longer enough. Inside the earth, the world was transformed into one of absolute darkness and echoing silence, broken only by the sound of their footsteps and ragged breaths. The air was cool and damp. In this subterranean world, away from the fire and the hunters, Adeline's purpose became crystal clear. She could not allow her father and Barrett to win. She could not let them destroy this land and these people. She turned to Kaylin in the oppressive darkness, her voice steady. "When we get through this," she said, "we are not running anymore. We have to expose them." Together they forged a daring plan. While the rest of the tribe would find a new, safer hiding place, she and Kaylin would separate from them. They would use the chaos of the fire as cover to travel north, to the town of Silver Creek, where an independent federal marshal was stationed. The folder of documents was their only weapon. It was an incredible risk. They would be traveling through hostile territory, hunted by dangerous men, but it was their only chance to fight back, to seek a justice that seemed impossible to find in their broken world. In the heart of the mountain, their shared purpose forged an unbreakable bond. When Adeline and Kaylin emerged from the far side of the mountain pass, they found a lone figure waiting for them, as if he had been expecting them all along. It was Gideon Croft, his face an unreadable mask in the dim light. He had anticipated their route, his skills as a tracker proving formidable. Kaylin immediately moved to place himself in front of Adeline, his hand reaching for the knife at his belt, ready for a final, desperate confrontation. The air crackled with tension. This was the end of the line, a lonely spot in the wilderness where their journey seemed destined to conclude in failure. But Adeline stepped forward, her fear replaced by a cold, clear focus. She looked the notorious bounty hunter directly in the eye. "I know who you are, Mr. Croft," she said, her voice surprisingly strong. "And I know what my father did to your family many years ago." Gideon Croft froze, his hand hovering over his own firearm. A flicker of surprise, then anger, crossed his face. "He used his power as a judge to seize your family's ranch on false charges, leaving you with nothing. It was a well-hidden secret, a deep wound that had fueled his cynical view of the world." Adeline held out the leather folder containing the fraudulent land contracts. "This is your chance for retribution," she continued, her voice resonating with conviction. "My father and the Thorns are just as corrupt now as they were then. Help us deliver this to the marshal in Silver Creek, and you will not only get your revenge, but you will also see true justice served. For your family and for his." At that moment, Barrett Thorne appeared, having finally caught up. Seeing the folder in Croft's hands, his face contorted with rage. "What is this? Give that to me, you fool!" Barrett lunged for the folder, his arrogance blinding him to the shift that had just occurred. But Gideon Croft, a man who had lived his life by a code of cold, hard currency, made a different kind of transaction. He made a choice. With a swift, powerful movement, he struck Barrett, knocking him unconscious. He then quickly bound his former employer's hands. He looked at Adeline, a new, unfamiliar light in his eyes. "The marshal will be very interested to hear your story," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I will deliver this one myself. I am sure he will have plenty to say." The arrival of Adeline and Kaylin in Silver Creek, accompanied by the infamous Gideon Croft and his captive, Barrett Thorne, sent shockwaves through the frontier town. The federal marshal, a man known for his integrity, listened intently as Adeline laid out the entire story, presenting the irrefutable evidence from the leather folder. Barrett, faced with Croft's testimony and the damning documents, confessed to the entire scheme, implicating both his father and Judge Monroe in a desperate attempt to save himself. The web of lies, so carefully woven, had finally unraveled. With sworn testimony and solid proof in hand, the marshal acted swiftly. He dispatched deputies with federal warrants for the arrest of Judge Alistair Monroe and the elder Thorne. The news of their downfall spread like wildfire across the territory. Their empire, built on a foundation of deceit and intimidation, crumbled into dust. The fraudulent land contract was declared null and void, and the sacred river valley of the Blackfoot tribe was placed under federal protection, securing their home for generations to come. Justice, it turned out, could sometimes find its way even to the furthest corners of the Wild West. Adeline stood on the dusty street of Silver Creek, a free woman in every sense of the word. The life of luxury and privilege she had known was gone, but in its place was something far more valuable, a sense of self, of purpose, and of honor. She had faced down her own family's corruption and had fought for what was right. She looked at Kalen, who stood beside her, his quiet strength, her constant anchor. There was no question of her returning to the world that had tried to break her. Her home was no longer a mansion filled with empty promises. Months later, Adeline and Kalen stood together on a ridge overlooking the peaceful river valley. The land was healing from the fire, with new green shoots pushing through the blackened earth. She had found her place not as a judge's daughter or a cattle baron's wife, but as a partner to a noble warrior, a member of a community that valued courage and heart above all else. They had not just survived the storm, they had emerged from it stronger, their love a testament to the fact that even in a world scarred by greed, honor, and hope, could create a new beginning.